Have you ever looked in the mirror and truly noticed your eyes? Not the color, but the question behind it. Why are they the way they are? Why are they brown or green or blue? If you have light eyes, what I'm about to tell you will change the way you look at yourself forever. Because behind your eyes lies a story that began thousands of years ago with a single person, a single genetic mutation, and a mystery that took scientists decades to solve. Every human being on Earth with blue eyes, every single one, without exception, from a fisherman in Norway to a woman in Jordan, from someone in Turkey to someone in Argentina, shares a common ancestor. A single person who lived between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago and experienced a unique genetic mutation. A mutation that shouldn't have survived. But it did. And if you have light eyes, you are living proof. But before you reach that person, you need to understand something fundamental. Why do your eyes have color? The color of your eyes depends on a substance called melanin, the same pigment that gives color to your skin and hair. Melanin is deposited in a part of the eye called the iris, which is the colored disc surrounding the black pupil. The more melanin your iris has, the darker your eye color will be. Brown eyes have a lot of melanin. Hazel eyes have a medium amount. But blue eyes don't have blue pigment. There is no blue pigment in the human body. What happens is that blue eyes have very little melanin in the front layer of the iris, and the incoming light is scattered in a specific way called Rayleigh scattering, the same phenomenon that makes the sky appear blue. The sky isn't blue. Your eyes aren't blue either. It's light playing with the absence of pigment. An optical trick written in your DNA. And this is where genetics comes in. Although for a long time it was believed that eye color was a simple matter, a dominant brown gene versus a recessive blue gene, the reality is much more complex. Up to 16 different genes have been identified as being involved in determining eye color. But there are two that dominate all the others and are responsible for most of the variation. They are called OCA2 and HERC2, and both are located on chromosome 15 of your DNA, very close to each other. The OCA2 gene produces the P protein, which is directly involved in melanin production within cellular structures called melanosomes. If this gene is functioning at full capacity, your melanosomes produce a lot of melanin, deposit it in the iris, and your eyes are brown. The HERC2 gene regulates OCA2. Think of it as a dimmer switch that controls how much energy reaches the melanin gene. If HERC2 gives OCA2 full power, you get brown eyes. If it reduces the power, you get lighter eyes. What Professor Hans Eiberg of the University of Copenhagen discovered, after more than a decade of genetic research that began in 1996, is that there is a very specific mutation in the HERC2 gene. This mutation is located in a regulatory region called intron 86, and it acts like a switch that lowers the power of the OCA2 gene. It doesn't turn it off completely, because if it did, the person would have no pigment in their skin, hair, or eyes, a condition known as albinism. What this mutation does is something much more precise and delicate. It reduces melanin production specifically in the iris, just enough so that instead of brown eyes, blue eyes are produced. It's an extraordinarily fine-tuned genetic volume control. Brown is the volume at maximum. Blue is the volume turned down almost to the minimum, but not completely off. And here's the extraordinary part of the discovery. Eiberg and his team conducted a massive study in which they analyzed the DNA of 155 blue-eyed people from Denmark, along with blue-eyed people from Turkey and Jordan. 3 completely different countries, separated by thousands of miles, with very different cultures, languages, and histories. People who had no apparent connection to each other except for one thing, the color of their eyes. And when the researchers compared the genetic sequence of the HERC2 region in all these people, they found something astonishing. Every single one of them carried the exact same mutation at the exact same point in the gene. The same genetic sequence, letter for letter, base for base, identical. This is statistically impossible if the mutation had arisen independently in different parts of the world. If blue eyes had emerged separately in Denmark, Turkey, and Jordan as three distinct mutations that just happened to produce the same visual result, the DNA sequences surrounding that mutation would be different. Each independent mutation would carry its own genetic context, its own surrounding variants, but they aren't different. They're identical. The same haplotype, the same genetic signature, which means only one thing: they all come from the same person. It's what geneticists call the founder effect. A single individual who lived between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago, probably in the region northwest of the Black Sea, experienced this mutation for the first time. Before that person, every human being on the planet had brown eyes. Every single one. Without exception. For more than 200,000 years of our species' existence, there wasn't a single pair of blue eyes on the entire Earth. Every human born during those 200,000 years looked at the world with brown eyes. And then, sometime during the Neolithic period, in some village in what is now southeastern Europe, someone different was born. Someone with a tiny change in a single letter of their DNA that reduced the production of melanin in their eyes. A minuscule, insignificant genetic copying error that caused no harm and conferred no obvious advantage. And that change survived. It was passed on to their children. Their children passed it on to theirs. Generation after generation, century after century, that allele traveled across Europe, through the Middle East, and eventually across much of the world. But here's something that defies logic. Why did it spread? The mutation from brown to blue eyes provides no clear biological advantage. You don't see better with blue eyes. In fact, blue eyes are more sensitive to bright light because they have less protective pigment. You don't become more resistant to the cold. You don't detect predators better. You don't digest food better. Professor Eiberg himself acknowledged this when he said that this mutation represents neither a positive nor a negative mutation. It simply shows that nature is constantly mixing the human genome, creating a genetic cocktail and testing different changes. So why did something that offers no survival advantage survive and spread? Researchers have several theories, and the most widely accepted one is fascinating. It's called sexual selection. In a population where everyone has brown eyes, where every person you've ever seen has brown eyes, someone with blue eyes stands out. They're different. They're novel. They're striking in a way you can't ignore. And in human evolution, novelty and striking can be powerfully attractive from a sexual perspective. People with blue eyes might have been chosen as mates more often simply because they were different, because their appearance was rare and therefore memorable in a sea of brown eyes. Over time, across hundreds of generations, that sexual preference would have caused the blue eye allele to spread through the population faster and faster. Another complementary theory relates to the ability to verify paternity. In societies where couples needed to cooperate for years to raise children, confidence in paternity was a matter of survival. A blue-eyed father who had a blue-eyed child could be more confident that the child was truly his, because blue eyes are a recessive trait. Two blue-eyed parents almost always produce blue-eyed children. If the child was born with brown eyes, it could raise suspicions. This genetic certainty might have incentivized blue-eyed fathers to invest more resources, more protection, and more care in raising their children, giving those children a survival advantage. It's a controversial theory, but some evolutionary studies support it. What is a proven fact is that blue eyes are especially concentrated in Northern Europe. In Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, up to 80% of the population has blue or light-colored eyes. In Estonia and Finland, the figures are similar. In Iceland, it exceeds 75%. As you move south and east, the frequency gradually decreases. In Spain and Portugal, blue eyes appear in around 15 to 20% of the population. In North Africa, in less than 5%. In East Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, they are practically non-existent. Worldwide, only between 8 and 10% of the total population has blue eyes. It is a trait that, although it has traveled the globe thanks to migrations and the mixing of populations, remains relatively rare on a global scale. But here comes the unexpected twist that changed everything we thought we knew about the genetic history of Europe. In 2014, a team led by Carles Lalueza Fox of the Spanish National Research Council, CSIC, published a study in the prestigious journal Nature that shook the foundations of genetic anthropology. They had managed to recover the complete genome of a Mesolithic hunter-gatherer from 7,000 years ago, whose remains were found in a cave in Labranya Arintero, in the Cantabrian mountains of the province of León, Spain. They named it Labranya 1. The cave, located in a cold mountainous area with a stable temperature, had preserved the DNA exceptionally well for thousands of years. When they analyzed his DNA, the surprise was twofold and devastating. First surprise: this man from 7,000 years ago had blue eyes. He carried the exact same genetic variations that produce blue eyes in modern Europeans. He was the oldest human found in Europe with genetically confirmed blue eyes, based on a complete genome. But the second surprise was even greater and more difficult to process. This blue-eyed man had dark skin. Not slightly tanned, not bronzed, dark. He carried the ancestral African versions of the genes that determine the light pigmentation of modern Europeans. His skin was as dark as that of a modern African. Think about it for a moment. Let it sink in. The first European whose complete genome we have sequenced had blue eyes and dark skin. That combination, which would seem absolutely extraordinary to us today, was probably the most normal thing in the world in Mesolithic Europe. The first Europeans weren't white. They had dark skin with dark hair, probably black or very dark brown, and many of them had blue eyes. The fair skin that we now automatically associate with Europe didn't arrive until much later, probably with the Neolithic farmers who migrated from the Middle East around 8,000 years ago, or perhaps even later with the migrations of pastoralists from the steppes. Blue eyes arrived in Europe before white skin. They had been there for thousands of years, shining in the faces of dark-skinned people who hunted deer and gathered fruit in the forests of the Iberian Peninsula. Lalueza Fox himself acknowledged that this discovery forced a complete rethink of all artistic reconstructions of European hunter-gatherers. For decades, textbooks, museums, and documentaries had depicted them with light skin, like modern Europeans. But DNA proved that this was incorrect. Labranya Uno was also lactose intolerant. He couldn't digest milk as an adult, something that would also change with the arrival of livestock and domesticated animals. He was a man who lived in Europe thousands of years before Europe became what we know today. And blue eyes are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to eye color genetics. Green eyes, which are even rarer than blue, represent only 2% of the world's population, making them the rarest eye color on the planet. Their genetics are more complex than those of blue eyes, resulting from the interaction of multiple variants across several different genes, not a single switch, as with blue eyes. The melanin in green eyes combines with a yellowish pigment called lipochrome, and with light scattering to create that emerald hue that many consider the most attractive eye color in the world. Honey-colored or amber eyes have their own story, with specific concentrations of melanin and lipochrome. Gray eyes result from a different distribution of melanin in the iris stroma. And there is even heterochromia, where people have each eye a different color, caused by differences in gene expression between one eye and the other during embryonic development. Each variation has its own genetic history, its own combination of switches and volumes in a code that we carry written on chromosome 15. What's most fascinating is that 74% of the total variation in human eye color is concentrated in a single region of chromosome 15, where the OCA2 and HERC2 genes are located. And within that region, a single change in a single letter of DNA, a single nitrogenous base out of the 3 billion that make up your entire genome, is responsible for the fundamental difference between brown eyes and blue eyes. One letter out of 3 billion. That's what separates brown eyes from blue eyes. A letter that changed thousands of years ago in a person who never knew what they had done, who never imagined that their descendants would carry that mark across the planet, who never knew that thousands of years later, scientists in Copenhagen would find their exact genetic signature in the DNA of people separated by oceans and continents and trace the path back to them, to that unique and unrepeatable moment when a single letter of DNA changed. If you have blue eyes, every time you look in the mirror, you're seeing the result of that moment. A moment that happened only once in the entire history of our species. A mutation that offered no biological advantage, that didn't help you hunt better or survive the cold, but that was different. And that difference survived. It spread, it crossed continents, it was passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years until it reached you. And if you have brown eyes, there's a powerful story for you too. Because your eyes are the original design, the baseline model our species used to walk the earth for over 200,000 years before any mutation changed them. Every person with brown eyes carries the oldest, most tested, and most universal version of the eye color gene. They are the eyes that saw our species' first sunrise on the plains of East Africa. The eyes that gazed at the horizon when the first humans decided to cross continents into the unknown. Your brown eyes are not the absence of something special. They are the original standard upon which everything else was built. The color of your eyes, whatever it may be, is a letter written to you by your ancestors thousands of years ago. A letter you cannot change, you cannot erase, and it carries coded information about where you come from, the path those who came before you traveled, and how a single letter in a code of 3 billion was able to change the way the world sees you and the way you see the world. Your DNA is not just an instruction manual for building your body, it is a history book, and your eyes are one of the most beautiful pages in that book.